and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast, episode number 90.
90.
Two numbers combined as if at random. So, what are we doing this week? My name's Matt. Your name's Quinns.
Yes, it is indeed. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast, where we talk about video games. No messing around.
Yeah, we've just messed around, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, lots of video games podcasts will have more messing around, as long as we have less than the average.
Substantially less messing around than is usually acceptable.
That is our tagline.
So I've been playing a bunch of Horizon Zero Dawn, as of you. We'll talk about that a bit.
Yes.
I've been playing some Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is lovely. We'll talk about that. And in addition to that, we've also gone back for this week for Don't Step on My Childhood. We have Gunstar Heroes, an old game from my past, and a bit of yours as well. So
absolutely,
we had a lot of fun playing that, and you can watch that video on coolghost.net. And yeah, let's just jump in. What have you been what would you like to talk about first?
Let's talk a bit about robot dinosaurs.
It's robot dinosaur time.
I don't see why they didn't just call Horizon Zero Dawn robot dinosaur time.
Yeah, I know. And actually, I got to the point in the plot where you realize why it's called Horizon Zero Dawn, but I'm still like, it doesn't excuse the fact it's not called robot dinosaur time.
Okay, here's an experiment I'm going to throw out here.
Yep.
Is Horizon Zero Dawn a better name than any of the following? Dinosaur Zero Dawn.
No.
Horizon Dinosaur Dawn.
No.
Horizon Zero Dinosaur.
Well, that might be misleading because I'm worried now that it has no dinosaurs.
It has no dinosaurs. Alternatively, we've got dinosaur : dinosaur. Anyway, the point is,
it should have the word dinosaur in the title. It's misleading advertising. I've written a complaint to my MP. To anyone
Your petition
who
has 7 signatures now.
Absolutely. I'm on change.org. Search for why aren't games all called dinosaur.
Yep.
And you should find it quite easily. Hoping to break 15 signatures by the end of the day. Anyway.
It's good, isn't it?
It's quite good.
Okay, so we're going to have a little frisson here because I think it is very good. And you're going to roll your eyes as soon as I say why. So just if people aren't aware, if they haven't been part of the marketing cycle, good on you. But this is a big open world game in the style of open world games. There are lots of side quests to do. You can run around, you get quests, they appear on your map. The combat is pretty good. It's third person. It's mostly the reason you would play it, I think.
Yes.
It's third person, tricky dinosaur hunting. A lot of the enemies are bigger than you. It's a little bit like Monster Hunter Light.
It's kind of guerrilla warfare-y in the fact that I find that I like the combat. You always feel like you are up against it and against the odds. And certainly if you're trying to just go in guns blazing, it doesn't work very well.
Yes.
You quite quickly suits better to having a combination of stealth.
It's a lot like Far Cry in that respect.
Yes.
Whereby Ubisoft's Far Cry 2 and then more so, it's close to 3 and Far Cry 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Whereby you look at an area full of stuff, whether it's dinosaurs or a bandit encampment, and then you tag them by looking at them through binoculars in the style of Metal Gear Solid. Like, I can name check so many games now because this is the main thing I've realized before getting onto Horizon proper that I wanted to talk about with you today. Have you noticed that we have got it to the point where AAA games now use so much shorthand that is shared?
Yes.
I was playing this, and at the same time you were playing Breath of the Wild, and I realized, oh my God, how many games have come out recently where you ride a horse, get off the horse, and then stealthily approach a target?
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of why I quite liked it and didn't love it, was because there was lots about Horizon that I thought was really exciting and really cool, but it's so bogged down with the trappings of what AAA games are that
So do you want to give some examples for that?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, it just feels like a beautiful chicken that's got like too much treacle in its wings and can't quite take off.
Why are you injecting or rubbing your chicken with treacle?
I'm not putting treacle on chickens. No, other people are. I understand why.
So developers.
So there's lots of these elements I do understand. Like a lot of it comes down to familiarity, and that's a big thing with AAA games. Right? Yeah, people it's not just about hand holding. It's about people buying a game that looks like a big glossy game and getting a big familiar glossy experience. So you have like the Ubisoft style systems. You have, like follow this thing and it will take you to your location. You have mini maps full of icons. You have.
You can increase the size of your bag by crafting a bigger bag.
And every time you walk past any bit of flora or fauna that you can pick up, it will be like, hey, pick me up. And I get all of that. But I just find that actually, I don't know if it's overexposure to it, but I just feel that a lot of that stuff is not conducive to actually the experience of playing the game they've made.
No. So here's the thing that I've been doing that is crazy, and I think you might roll your eyes at me because it's been a while since I talked about this particular thing. Matthew, What difficulty did you play Horizon Zero Dinosaur: Dinosaur
at? Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm actually just playing it on the normal difficulty.
Yes, exactly. So I talked to my friend about this.
I've heard a lot of people saying it's great on hard, though.
Yes, so I put it on hard and was having quite a lot of fun because it forces you to engage with all of the mechanics it has that are different. It forces you to do things like lay tripwires to identify the weaknesses of dinosaurs, to shoot off the right bits with a bow and arrow.
Right.
More importantly, you can't just... It no longer becomes a game where expanding your pouch is frivolous because the game is difficult. I actually cranked it up after playing it on hard for the first few hours to very hard, the hardest difficulty setting, where like just 2 hits kills you. And this is why I have such respect for Horizon Zero Dawn. We've talked before on this podcast about the fastest way to tell if a game is good is to crank it up to the highest difficulty setting, see if it's bullshit. And to its credit, Horizon Zero Dawn, it's mostly not bullshit.
Yeah.
You can play it on the hardest difficulty setting, be clever, have quite good reflexes, and just play an incredibly tense game where 1 hit kills you.
That's interesting. I mean, really, I've just found that like it took me a little while to click with the game and to get a sense that really, and the same thing. I got to the same point of being like, you can't mess around here. You need to identify these things' weaknesses, and you need to take them apart piece by piece in a very specific and careful order. But the difference is on easier difficulties, it's not that you die, it's just you feel like you're wasting your life.
Yes.
Like, it just takes so long to kill. So
you've got to...
I'm still kind of playing it as perfectly as I can. It's just that there's the risk is not of death. It's the risk is I'm wasting my life.
It's that touch. It reminds me of when I was playing through Mass Effect, and like so many people, I think, when you're shooting through a corridor in Mass Effect, you have a fight and you don't do very well. And
I just put it on easy.
Well, sure, exactly.
That's because that was,
because you want to glide through this stuff. But Horizon Zero Dawn becomes a very different proposition when in a fight, you get hit and that might just kill you. I think I kind of fell in love with hard difficulty, and it gives you a glimpse of the game they could have made.
Well, this is the thing, and this is why there's a couple of things that kind of I struggle with a little bit. Partially, I think fighting humans in that game is very weak.
That does not necessarily have to be in it.
And no, it doesn't. But then I'm a story guy, right? And actually, I really liked the opening to that game. I loved the story. I love what it was doing.
Let's talk a little bit about this then, because people might not play it or buy it.
So it's like, your
lukewarm recommendation.
No, it's fun, right? It's fun.
No, I agree. It's not that good, but I'm enjoying it as
I think it's more like when it actually shines. When you are in a point where it's and really for me, it was when I got about to the kind of canyon area where you start facing bulls and stuff.
Pterodactyls, bulls, crocodiles.
Yeah, when I started facing the big stuff, the stuff where it's okay, you need to know how to fight these things or they're going to rinse you.
Yeah.
That's when I thought the game started to really shine. And I kind of just felt I wish the game had the confidence to just leave behind a lot of the... It felt like a lot of mechanics and ideas had just been put in because it was an open world game.
Yeah.
And I felt like they added nothing and actually detracted from the experience. And when I felt when it was as simple as being hey, you got to get down this road, but there's a giant bloody robot thing here.
Yeah.
Are you going to fight it? I'll tell you my favorite. I'll be positive about this. My favorite thing about this game, by miles, is those robot crabs.
Oh, I don't know if I found them yet. Oh, you mean the ones that carry stuff on their back?
With their boxes.
Yeah.
Because that, for me, right?
So tell the people at home about your robot crab.
The robot crabs, they're they basically have, they look like kind of little crustacean-y crab things. But instead of
when you
a
say
shell
little,
on their back, they're
the size
big.
of Volkswagens.
They're very big. But they're on their back, where the shell is a box.
Yeah.
And it's a box of goodies. And often it's really good stuff. So what you can do is you can just kill these things and then you get the loot. But actually, if you kill them before you've taken the box off their back, you don't get that. But what you can do is there's a clasp holding, a big metal clasp holding the loot onto the back of the crab. So what you can do is you can basically use special arrows that destroy parts of the creatures. Because the coolest thing about this game by far is the fact that you can have damaging arrows that specifically damage parts of things. So you could basically chip away at these robots like binary domain.
Until but then the fun thing is that they then get completely different attack patterns.
Yes.
The cute thing of oh, he has a flamethrower. I'll shoot off the flamethrower. You're just going to run at me now.
And it's pure Monster Hunter as well of being you cut off that bit and then they can't do flames. They can't do this because you've literally cut that part of their body, but in a less violent way because they're robots. But yeah, with these guys, they've got this thing that's holding this treasure thing on the back. And what I love about this is that's the one point where I think all of the elements of the game that work the best shine. Because what you've got is the precision combat of being hey, if you land an arrow specifically there, land a couple of arrows, you'll knock this crate off its back. But then you've got the stealth thing. And I love that whenever you encounter these guys, the encounter is not as simple as fight or flight. It's not avoid or fight. it's always enticing, I find, to be like, maybe I can sneak really close, knock the thing off their back, quickly rush over, take the things out of the box, and then get back and hide in the bush before they notice. And I've done that a few times, and it feels amazing.
Well, that's when you're closest to like a real hunter living off the land, right? So let's talk a little bit about the aesthetics of it, the profoundly like, I mean, I think it's set in America because there's turkeys running around. I haven't got that far in the story. I understand there's a lot more about like world building and how the world came to be later. But it feels like a deeply Native American situation where sort of you get, well, I want to say Iron Age, but also there's a mix of sort of civilization levels. People living off the land, and you all of the weapons and stuff you craft are bits that come from robots. You have to get bits off of robots, and I think that's when it's really interesting when you don't even necessarily have to kill them, or like it introduces you very early on to the concept of there's a herbivores essentially that are surrounded by protective velociraptors, and you can distract a certain kind of animal, and you like scaring off a whole herd because you got the animal you wanted, and you don't care if you get seen by the stealth mechanics.
Yep.
Lots of this good stuff, or even just the rope caster, I think, is really cool. The thing that lets you
fantastic,
attach monsters to the ground, which I had a great moment of when you first encounter the giant awful birds and they fly over you, firing fire at you. And it's awful until you first see one on the ground and you're like, what happens if... And you just tie it to the ground.
Pin them to the ground, yeah.
And then you tie its foot or its wing to the ground, and the animations are really well done, actually, for like tying different parts of monsters, and it struggles and it can't fly. And that is such a wonderful problem solving and like an organic approach to encountering monsters.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing is like when you are fighting the enemies, when you are like in there using this tool set.
It's almost when you're not fighting them, when you're just trying to get something out of them, you know?
Yeah, but that's what I would have liked to see more of, really, is the fact that it's all very binary. It feels like whenever you're traveling around the world and you encounter these things, it's very rare that you're actually hunted by anything. It's usually just that you can choose to avoid something or not.
Yes.
Unless it's the story and you have to fight something. But it means that you make a choice. You're like, do I want to fight this? Do I not want to fight this? And usually if you want to fight something, it means you want to fight it for the purposes of killing it, right? Which is fine. But it's kind of more interesting when you have scenarios where like and that's why I would have loved to see more like that with the crab things, where you can think, actually, I just want to get in, like knock this component off or whatever, and then get out.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like either you are in stealth mode or you are not in most games, and in this one. And it's either you are fighting to kill them or you are running away. But what you're describing is something that exists between either of those states. It's like, are you hiding or are you showing yourself to scare them off? Is there one thing you want to kill? That's when it starts getting interesting, when what you want out of the combat and how you are interacting with the monsters is more complicated than the binary of kill or not, stealth or not.
I think that comes specifically in this game because of the stealth, because it's the stealth system being cool and the fact that you can go in and out of it. You basically want to attack from stealth, but then if you get into trouble, which even on normal difficulty I frequently do, I then just want to think, right, is it time now to just get out of sight, hide in some long grass, and just wait for them to lose me again for a minute so I can then set up another attack?
Yeah.
And the fact that you can constantly slip in and out of stealth and use this kind of guerrilla tactics on these things, and it's the only way to get an advantage, I just think I really like the moments where you're actually forced to make an interesting choice of being like, okay, you're not fighting anymore. Do you want to carry on? Because it was like, we talked about this on the last Shut Up and Sit Down podcast that I was on, about the loss aversion and about how people, in theory, that should be a choice at any point. You're halfway through a fight, but maybe you want to just leave?
Yes.
But people will never choose that because you feel like you've invested time to the fight, you've invested resources, so you're always going to continue the fight. And what I loved about fighting those crab things is it's like, I was ideally just going to kill them and get all of the goodies and get all of the loot. But sometimes you think, maybe I leave now. Like, I've got some stuff. Maybe I just leave.
You know what game did that really well was Stalker? Well, actually, so two games, one of which you've been playing is Shadows of Mordor?
Shadow Mordor, yeah.
Yeah, over or off?
Shadows over Mordor.
Shadows over video
still
games.
Remember her name. No, it's called Shadows of Mordor. Shadows. I don't know why I know that.
Never
but it's specifically
sing that song.
I invented it. I never will. Okay. No one will.
Good. So no, Shadows of Mordor, and actually the original like Stalker something Chernobyl.
Yeah.
What the hell was that?
Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. I think
it's not.
I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Okay, well, whatever it is. But both of those games have the dynamic roving packs of enemies, and also, Chernobyl specifically had you wanted to collect loot from enemies, and so very often in Chernobyl it would be like you'd engage a firefight with a few guys in the distance, and they don't have very good guns, and you think you're okay, and then you hear the crackle of rifles to the east, and you're like, oh no, there's more people here. this is way dangerous. Now my objective has changed to running away.
Yeah.
It's that fun pivoting that you get in Shadows over Mordor of like, I will attack. This is probably fun. This isn't fine. I'm running away.
Yep.
It's the way that your priorities can suddenly shift in a really organic, fun way.
Yeah, totally. And that's like, and this is the thing, I don't want to sound down on Horizon. It's like, in many ways, it's a real achievement.
It's very beautiful. It's quite interesting. It's fun.
Yeah, I think it's more that, to me, it's a very good example of what happens in game dev when you have a development project that is broad, in terms of how the team works. So instead of having like, not that many people working on something for a long time, you have a lot of people working on something for a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
And it means that you have these designs that have to be a bit more reliable, and everyone goes off and makes these different things.
So you interpret it as, what is it? Is it Renegade or Rebellion Studios?
I actually can't remember this case.
Well, but you think it was a case of the people coming forward and going, we want a game that ticks all these boxes. Well, you know how to do a loot system, do it?
Not as much, but to a degree, yes. I mean, basically, it's not so much of being like, but when you have a lot of people working on something, it's more difficult to be cohesive and pin things down.
Sure.
Right? And I just feel like there are some things.
It's difficult to follow through with a coherent vision because then you need vision holders and communication and stuff.
Yeah, it becomes harder. And I just felt like there were some really cool ideas in Horizon, but
yes,
I felt like
they weren't explored as much as they.
Yeah, I felt like A, they weren't explored as much as they should be, and B, a lot of the other systems in the game just weren't working with it. It was like, it's a game that needed somebody to go, guys, this is it, and just be confident enough about the core of what they've made to sweep away a lot of the guff around the edges,
and then explore and examine the systems they've made that are really good.
I mean, there's such a simple, interesting thing in that game that threw me off at first. I was playing the game wrong for a while.
Uh-huh.
I was just trying to beat the enemies with shooting at stuff, and I was hitting a bit of a brick wall I was fine for a while, but then I started to find some of these fights hard, and I didn't understand why. And it wasn't until I started actually going and looking more at my weapons and looking at buying other weapons, because what I'd done is I just gone and bought a really expensive good bow.
Right.
And then I was like trying to use that for everything. And I was wrong because
rather than using the sling and the tripcaster.
Yeah, and I hadn't bought the rope gun that ties things down.
Yeah.
Because, and this is why, it's because they'd chosen to present the weapons in the game using the traditional color coding of green, blue, purple, right?
Oh, you mean rare, uncommon.
Exactly.
Rare, yeah.
And so this is the game presents itself as being an open world shooty RPG like a Ubisoft game.
Oh, but you assumed that those other alternate weapons were just worse than the. Yeah,
yes,
there's some weird communication in it. I didn't realize that. I thought it was quite interesting that I could only ever have two sets of armor, and I was like, oh well, so I really have to pick my armor carefully, and and then it's like, no, I hadn't upgraded my armor bag.
Exactly. And this is the thing, is there's all sorts of weird systems that aren't communicated, or in this case, just use standard systems. Like they've just gone, well, we'll make it green, blue, purple. Everyone understands that. Everyone does understand that, yes, but they understand it in a way that does not actually gel with what you've made.
Quote unquote gamers understand that. It's an unfortunate bit of shorthand to have calcify in the
exactly
in the gaming consciousness.
And that's the thing. But as it was, these weapons, admittedly, the purple weapons are good, but they're good because they give you more versatility. They're not
actually any better.
Yeah, they don't actually do any more damage.
Yeah.
And some weapons, you can have a green weapon that's you'd think would be junk, but it's still going to be the weapon you use.
Yeah, and it's this versatility that the game kind of lets you explore. I mean, I appreciate that the game lets you explore and figure out some of these mistakes of your own. Even just the fun stuff of okay, you encounter the scrappers and they have radars on their backs. So they will ping the surroundings unless you shoot the radar off. And then you encounter sawtooths who are weak to fire but unbelievably dangerous giant lions.
Yeah.
And you fight them individually and that's fine. But then it's like when the first time you come across a group with both of them and you go, oh, okay, so do I start the fight by disabling the radar or do I start the fight by disabling the lion? And then can I do that stealthily with either of them? And yeah, you end up combining the systems and squishing them together in a really fun web of priorities, which really comes out on high difficulties because you can't get that shit wrong. You're not wasting your time. You have to get it right. Suddenly you're thinking about these cool systems you put in place. I think it's cool, but I desperately want to compare it to the other game you've been playing, which is Breath of the Wild.
Well, this is the thing, right? This is the interesting thing. I played Horizon. I liked it. But I found there was one thing about it that was just really grating me. And I sat down to write a big thing about being like, this is why open world games really have to change. And then I played Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild. And it was basically kind of what I'd just written this screed about what I'd
Breath
like.
of Wild does.
And it was like, oh, this is it.
So if people missed this, let's take it from the top. Nintendo have a new game console out called the Switch.
They do, yeah.
Matthew owns one.
I wasn't going to buy one for a while. I was going to be sensible. I'm usually really sensible with this stuff. But I just really wanted one. And you know what? I don't regret it. I'm a big fan of handhelds. I'm a big fan of Nintendo handhelds when they hit the point.
Matthew, I'm confused. Is the Switch a handheld or a
Quentin.
home console?
It's kind of what I find actually I like most
the
about
answer is we still don't know.
I like that it's not for me the duality, it's the just general versatility that I like. I like that basically you can plug it into the dock and then it plays on your telly, but then you can obviously carry it around like a handheld and play it
this
like
is kind of that thing where
PS Vita.
And I appreciate that we are wading into the territory that's been well trodden by think pieces, but this is what people thought when the iPad first came out. It's like, I've got a PC and a phone, why do I need an iPad? Then you buy an iPad and you never put it down.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I've really been enjoying the fact that I can play it a bit in bed. I can play it on the TV.
Have you played it on the toilet yet?
I haven't yet, but I'm sure I will. But even the fact
like the first thing I'd do.
Even the fact sometimes it's like because you can just detach the screen and have a mini screen and the controller. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, I'm kind of bored of having this on my lap, so I'll just like lean. I'm kind of bored of holding it up. So you can just have like the screen on your lap whilst you have the controllers like lifelessly in your arms laying down. It's like super lazy mode.
You know what's nice is that like games have become more ergonomic the older we get. So it's like as we
deteriorate,
like we can no longer sit cross-legged because controller cables are like 3 feet long.
Yeah.
So we can't sit cross-legged on the floor anymore. We're old men. But then they came along wireless controllers. Now we can't sit in the same chair for 2 hours because our spines will break.
Exactly.
But we've got a Switch.
I like it a lot. And I mean, as much as I like the whole cross-play stuff of having save files that will automatically update across, there is something beautifully neat about just having something you can just pick up, start playing straight away. But yeah, Zelda.
That's the kind of guy you are. Just a breezy, feel good.
You know, as an adult, it's so important to just have something that you can just play. Like, I mean, I know it sounds insane.
I think we have multiple podcasts on the topic.
But like, I was recording some footage from Dark Souls 3 this morning for a video I'm working on, and I was like, oh, it's cool, I'll just capture some Dark Souls 3. Yeah, I uninstalled it from my PS4 to make room for something else. Okay, well, I'll install it, put the disc in. Oh, the disc is dirty or damaged. Right, okay. Then it's like I had to go and clean the disc, and then several times before it worked, and then it installed it. And it's just like, I don't know, I do this professionally, and when you just want to think, oh, I just want to play that now.
Yeah.
Having something that you can pick up. And even like last night, I was going to play some Zelda in here, and then I just started it, and then I'm like, oh, actually, my wife's watching TV in there. I'll just take it with me and just do that. It is kind of the
antithesis, because I was going to buy a PSVR, and I have not because of how antisocial it would be with my wife.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the opposite. Like if I buy a PSVR, I am in my own zombie Resident Evil filled world probably. Whereas you can go and lie next to your lady wife.
I think that's it.
Look at my Zelda.
When you mention the iPad, I think that is key. I think there's a real difference, and lots of people love playing games on iPads because you can just sit next to the partner while they're watching TV or something, and you can just be on your iPad.
Care
fine.
Necessarily.
No, but I think there's a difference. I think if you set up
it's still. I'm being facetious, but also no, it does. It does. Sometimes I will, even if I don't care what game Lee is playing, I will want her to be playing a game in the same room as me because then she's in the same room as me.
Yeah, exactly. But there's weird walls about what's acceptable not to. Like sitting on your iPad playing a game is somehow less antisocial than sitting on your 3DS.
If I'm on the toilet, Lee's like, I don't want to come in there. I don't get it, but that's just up to her. If I'm playing a Switch on the toilet, she's all about it. She'll come into the toilet. Anyway,
let me give you my turbo pitch about what I was frustrated with me about open world games in general and what Breath of the Wild does to fix this.
I think that you and I are possibly arriving to this at the same point because it's like, sorry, did I say this to you on the podcast or off it? How many games have horses?
Yeah, you're obsessed with horses.
Bonkers.
Yeah, you
said
this
seriously.
On the podcast.
Okay, right.
You're obsessed with horses.
I'm dying now.
You're dying.
I'm dying. I'm repeating myself. Matt, just listen to me.
What's your problem with horses? Just explain to me.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's like it's not about horses. It's about why the horses are present, right? So what we've got is the I literally can't remember how much of this I said on the podcast. We've talked.
No, you mentioned that too many games have horses. You're doing the airline food thing. What's the deal with that? Horses.
Okay, no, what it is that we have currently, with games being so expensive, reached a point where we can create a really functional, big, exciting open world, right? Since, Skyrim and Red Dead Redemption first cracked it, it's like, oh, you have a sort of world with a lot of, I guess, third-party stuff. We can all make trees. Trees are relatively easy. Grass, mountains. This is all comparatively easy.
Stephen, make a tree. But everybody, trees now.
But compared to how hard it is to make an alien world, which has to go through art design and all this stuff. So it's just cheaper and simpler if you're going to do an open world to make it look kind of like our world. And then if you're going to do that, then horses work. Honestly, if someone in the Cool Ghosts community wants to make a list of AAA games where you get a horse in the last 7-8 years compared to like all of gaming history, we've gone horse mad, and I won't stand for it.
I think I know why though.
Well, I don't know. What I'm saying is there's a lot of language which is being carried over from game to game, and it blows my mind that even Nintendo are doing this now with Zelda.
To be fair, they had a horse. They've had a horse for a long time.
If we call that the Horse Zero, right? If we call Epona Pony Zero, and then...
Right. You can't be like, Nintendo jumping on this horse bandwagon.
but I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Am I mad?
Do. No, you're not. And that's the interesting thing is it's all about the challenges that open world produces for game designers, how they get around them, right? And this is my frustration with open world games.
Okay.
Horses are a really cool fix, I think, because horses have autonomy, yeah? So it means that you can have a vehicle which will not go anywhere you want. If you have a motorbike, you can't have a motorbike that says, actually, no, I'm not going off this cliff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you've got a horse, it means you can still restrict players and be like, this is a vehicle that you can't take here because it's an invisible wall with legs. It will just go, no, I'm not going there. And you can accept that because it's a horse.
Yeah.
Whereas any other vehicle, anything that's not sentient, doesn't work. So I get it. But it's interesting that basically these restrictions and the way people get around these restrictions in the same ways again and again
that's
the problem.
That is my point.
Yeah.
It is the fact that designers have realized, oh, this works. We will all do this.
Exactly. But that's why I found myself slightly bored, even though I was like playing
in Horizon
and being like, this is great. This is cool.
For the record, Horizon is a game where you get a horse.
Yeah, no, it does. It's robot horses.
Yes.
And you get new ones all the time.
Yeah.
Switch them out. Do what you want.
That was the most Steve Brule thing.
Switch them out. Do what you want.
Just switch them out, your horse, when you...
It's your house. Do what you want. And some of the problems I'm just going to roll you through this really quickly, right?
Yes.
The problem is, this is my thing, is in open world games, where does the game reside, right? And especially in a game like Horizon, right? You want that game to reside on the main part of the screen where you are looking at these vistas, looking at these hills, looking at this beautiful landscape that they've poured so much money into, right?
Yeah.
But, right, you also have to contend with the fact that players have to navigate your world.
Yes.
How do they do that? Well, in Horizon, they get around the big problem. And I think the big problem in open world games is
finding your way around.
But also, you've got to have your cool vistas, right? You've got to tick that box, right? But what do cool vistas mean? Hills, right? How do you deal with hills? How do you deal with hills? Because hills, right? The problem is you look at a map and you go, I've got to get here to here. How do you stop players then doing the classic video game thing of spending hours jumping over mountains just because it's the quickest route, just because you want to go as the crow flies? Because I do that all the time. And there's two ways you can do that, right? You can either make it really steep things, and that's why I love canyon style bits. I love the canyon bit in Horizon because it's like really physically obvious walls. You're just like, I can't get up that. That's like vertical and not like a hill that might be too steep, but maybe it's not. The interesting thing is Horizon tries to get around this by having waypointing that tells you where to go.
It's quite aggressive waypointing.
But you can switch it off, but it tells you how to go via roads. It's just like, basically the weird thing about open world design is it's just like, you can go anywhere, you can do what you want, but then the devs are going, oh, don't go there, don't do that. There's nothing up this fucking hill. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So either you put stuff on top of the fucking hills so people will do it, but then not feel like they're wasting their time, or you discourage them from doing it with invisible walls, or as Horizon tries to admirably, just tries to guide you and be like, hey, why don't you just stick to this road? Like,
yeah, because there's nothing over the wall.
Exactly. It makes sense. The other solution is what you get in Breath of the Wild is be like, hey, you can go anywhere. You can go over those mountains, but it has very strict, simple systems for that. You climb. You have a little stamina ring that when you climb, you can't climb for that long, and you can level it up so you can climb more. You can do things so you can climb more. But generally speaking, you can look at a wall and go, can I climb that now? Can I get up that hill?
Well, this is why what it immediately struck me when I was watching you play Breath of the Wild earlier, because it always looked a bit empty to me in trailers, but as soon as I saw you playing it and heard how little music there is and saw how many weird small details like insects and fish that you might collect, and I immediately realized that, it's not Skyrim, it's trying far more to do or provoke Minecraft's atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, in a way, it's like Skyrim was already trying to be a bit more cinematic. I've seen people say it reminds them of Morrowind, and I think there's probably something to be said for that. But just being like this similar style thing of just having this big sandbox of things and things to explore and things to learn about, but with less of a kind of like gravitas behind things, just more of a kind of like chilled vibe.
Yeah. Morrowind being the Elder Scrolls game before 4, if people are young and haven't
the
played
old school one that everyone always banged on about.
Old weird game.
It was weird.
But the point is that you arrived as a nobody and everyone thought you were a shithead. So the adventure that you made was very much like of your own doing, which was cute. You could make money and stuff, but it was never like, you're the hero, you have the power to say fuss and men fall over.
Yeah, and it had less of a thing of like whenever you walked into a town, somebody running over to you and being like,
there's a dragon,
Lord.
there's a dragon.
It was much more muted. It was like you just turned up and nobody. It was just
or someone tried to mug you, which was like routinely the funniest thing. That was a world that hated you, which was kind of a delight to then ultimately end up mastering. So you're telling me that Breath of the Wild is more like you're just pottering around a world that doesn't care about you?
To a degree, yeah.
That seems antithetical to all Zelda games.
Well, that's the funny thing. It's basically just really, and it's just not a Zelda game in many ways, which is great. It's
That's good, because honestly, I don't want to necessarily play another Zelda.
No, I've played like loads of them, like so many. I like the formula, but to be honest, playing this, it is a breath of fresh air.
Ooh.
Just in the fact that it's basically a wonderful, open, systematic, really heavy systems world. So it's like you just discover things all the time. And this is why I'm just trying to have a social media blackout. Even now, I just mute.
Yeah, if people could stop posting shots of Breath of the Wild, that would be really great.
Absolutely unbelievably irresponsible. People can't even buy it. It's not even like, why don't you buy it? It's like people can't. It's not available.
Yeah.
So yeah, but just tiny things that I'm constantly discovering. Like sometimes by accident, you'd be like, hey, that just happened. What was that about? And then you'd be like, and then you go away and you actually do a little experiment on your own. You're like, what happens if I try and recreate the conditions when that happened? And you go, it happened again. That's cool. And then basically you collect loads of items for monsters you kill and stuff you find. And sometimes it's obvious what you use things for. It's like, this is for a recipe, this is for that. But sometimes you're like, what's this for? And then you experiment with it and then you work it out.
Well, that's the absolute, in some ways, as much as we're talking about similarities, that's the opposite of Horizon Zero Dawn's design ethos, right? Where Horizon is saying, we will give you all the things you recognize. It's like, you know from the moment you pick up the first collectible object, it's like, oh, I use this for crafting. And then if you hover the cursor over it in the inventory, there's 50 words of text that tell you what kind of crafting you can use it for. There's a sub-menu that tells you, it's like the Don't Starve Fallout school of crafting of just, you are like, I don't even know. There's no comparison in literature. MacGyver isn't even true anymore because MacGyver didn't do boring shit like make his own bullets.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm sure he did.
Made himself a bigger bag.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
How's it going, MacGyver? Pretty good. I just made a bigger bag.
Why'd you do that, MacGyver?
I had these raccoons.
MacGyver, have you made... Oh my God, there's eyeballs in this bag. Why do you have them?
Don't want to waste a good bit of the raccoon.
Oh.
Throwing money in the bin, son.
MacGyver, you need to take your medication.
Yeah. God, good old MacGyver.
Do you remember that episode of MacGyver where MacGyver...
That's the best one. Murdered 600 raccoons.
Murdered 600 raccoons and made a backpack and then put all the other raccoon skins in the backpack.
To make the backpack increasingly bigger.
Yes.
And then he filled.
It's almost like...
It's terrible.
Like an Escher thing of like, you're carrying a bag which contains smaller bags, which in turn contain the materials required to make bigger bags.
Yeah, it's let's be blunt, nonsensical. Having said that, like Breath of the Wild still has the annoying thing about it, which everyone's already talked about, is you have limitations on equipment you can hold, like and your swords and shields and bows. You never really keep them. You pick them up and then they break after use. And they break more quickly.
Yeah, why are people talking about this? Like this is a big thing?
It is kind of annoying.
But they clearly chose to do it for a reason.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm wondering if the more I play it, I'll work that out. At the moment, I can't quite see it, other than the idea of, not getting too attached to any of your equipment, because that's less of a point in this, and it's more about explore. I get the impression they want you to mess with the systems more. They've put in tons of interesting physics stuff, tons of ideas, and they want you to actually rely less on combat and more on doing weird, cool things. But as I say, haven't got a strong opinion on that yet because I'm not far away enough. But what I love about it, what I adore, is I find myself when I'm playing open world games like Horizon in this situation where I don't want all this UI stuff. I don't want all this stuff cluttering on my screen. So I switch it all off, right? I'm just like, I don't want it. I want to just be in this world, right?
Yeah.
But then I don't really know what I'm doing. So I have to like look at the map. And then as soon as I look at the map, I'm like, oh, but there's all these things I could do nearby. Let's do some of that. And how far away am I from that side quest? Maybe I'll do that. And then suddenly what happens to me...
It turns the game from an adventure into a shopping list.
Yeah. Or like it turns the game into like just scrubbing through this land rather than going off an adventure. I feel like I'm just rinsing it for stuff. And I'm getting distracted for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I'm getting distracted because I want to go and get that treasure or that resource or that thing. Whereas what I love about Zelda is the map stuff is super light. And often actually when you are using the map, you're using it to put your own marks on the map. It will hardly mark anything on the map. And it means you think, oh, there's something cool here, but I don't know what it is. Get the map out, put a little stamp on it. Means like, come and look at this later maybe. There's something here, but I don't know what it is. The world is just scattered with lots of tiny puzzles that are just like, they are repeated. Sometimes you're like, oh, it's one of these again. I know what to do. Like there's a thing and I have to find a thing and put it in. Oh, there's the thing. Okay, done. But it's full of tiny little details, but you just strike off and you're like, the wonderful thing about it as well is you actually, as you create your own map, a lot of it is about finding out where stuff is. So hills are not just something that you go over because it's a shortcut. It's like you get to a new area and you're like, where shall I go? No idea. Let's just try and climb up the biggest hill I currently can so I can look around. And then you've got like a telescope that you can then look around and you can mark things on by pressing a button and it will put a marker on the map, but where it is. And then you can basically then be like, well, I'm going to go for that now. Or you can be like, I'll go there later.
You know, I'm reminded of a couple of exploration games which have, because when you were showing me this map system earlier in Breath of the Wild, I was trying to think of other games that have really nailed exploration. And it's funny how it's often not the games with the big expansive worlds, like the GTAs and the Horizon Zero Dawns, like have roads. They want to keep you to roads. It's exactly what you were saying. And I feel like the games that have really succeeded in terms of going off the map being a scary thing, I'm thinking about Subnautica and I'm thinking about The Long Dark, which sort of Subnautica, but for cold Canada as opposed to being under an alien sea. But both of those games captured a feeling that I would love to feel more, where when you go off map, when you go into areas you don't recognize, every step or every swim you take in Subnautica feels dangerous, like you're getting further away from what you recognize. And my God, if that isn't the most exciting feeling in open world games, that's also in Minecraft as well, where exploration, every step feels you're taking a gamble. Take 100 steps, then you've made a big gamble into where am I now? Is what I'm saying making sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then Breath of the Wild feels like that a lot of the time. Sometimes you go into an area and immediately the monsters are really dangerous and can kill you in one hit. And you're like, okay. But you can try and avoid them. You can stealth and you can be like, I'm just going to try and push ahead. And you can dip your foot into areas that you're clearly not supposed to be in. Just to find some secret stuff, I found a diamond, it's worth loads of money. Like now I can take that back to like where I am figuratively in the arc of the game and buy loads of cool stuff with that. Like it's awesome.
You know what's funny is we began this podcast talking about how similar all these games are, but actually what we're also discovering is that yes, they are very similar, but also these two games we're playing represent completely different philosophies. One of which, Horizon Zero Dawn, having very clear aggressive gating from one area to another, and another game being about exploration and having, it sounds like, no gating or level-based gating that means that you can go into these areas. I would love for Horizon Zero Dawn to let me wander off into an area with huge dinosaurs. And this is the thing, it's just about the fact, and I really hope that more of the kind of AAA game space starts to feel this, because I've got heavy fatigue now. I know lots of people go, oh, well, don't play these games, whatever. But I feel like this fatigue will cotton on. There are people out there who just play a couple of games every year and they're not as into it, but we've just hit it early. Like people are going to, if you keep using the same systems with stuff all the time, people are going to get bored. You're talking about the MMO grocery list school of game design.
Exactly. And I mean, like, even though Horizon is excellent at what it does, it still brings it's interesting that there's lots of the best.
It's more like it's excellent in spite of what it is.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is lots of the things I loved about Horizon and wanted to applaud were the moments where the game had it's when it circumvented its own problems rather than just being I don't know about problems,
because those those problems, quote unquote, are the same things that made you love Phantasy Star, like when you were a teenager.
No, yeah.
They're not problems initially. They become problems when you become tired of them. Everyone loves their first MMO. I'm sure everyone listening to this played an MMO and lost like a month to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it was World of Warcraft or Guild Wars or Final Fantasy 14?
12?
But
I think it's just about shifting it up. And I think what I love about, and I'm taking Zelda so slowly, and I'm just trying to like not read anything about it. And what's interesting to me is I've got to the first point where it's like, hey, here's 4 locations in the world. There's 4 things to do, and they're both like really far away from me. All really
4 things, and they are both.
They're all of them are really far away from each other.
Okay,
they're all in different areas of the world, and it doesn't say, hey, go to this one first. You could just go to the closest one first, but it doesn't give you any sense of like order. Just which ones to do is the easiest one to do first. It's just like, hey, there's 4 things. And that's like the main drive of the game. But I'm not even doing that. I'm just like exploring. And I'm like, you saw earlier when I was like, I did a hang glide onto a hill and I stepped up and I'm like, oh, it's a bit cold. It's too cold. I just spent loads of money on a slightly warmer coat, which means I can go to cold places and be okay. But that place is slightly too cold. And what I've got now is I've got 2 choices. I can either be like, well, this bit's not for me yet. It's too cold. Or I can go and do some cooking to make some recipes that will boost my and stock up on loads of like cold resistant stuff so I can go to this cold mountain. I don't know what's on that mountain.
But it doesn't matter. And what
But I can, and I more than anything now, even though there's no marker, there's nothing telling me to go up there, I want to go on an adventure on that mountain.
What lesson did Minecraft teach us? It should have taught the entire games industry that you don't need to put something on a mountain, because if a player chooses to climb the mountain rather than being told to do it, they don't need a reward.
Yeah.
If you put a mountain in the map, the player's going to climb it. They don't. Do you remember at Shadow of the Colossus do you remember the shrines that periodically showed up that I think let you save your game?
Yeah.
They were very tall structures, and you could climb them. They were like small but not serious climbing challenges, and you go up the spire, and it was like, I don't know, 60 feet off the ground. And if you climb up there, all that happened was that the camera pulled back. It pulled back about...
Gave you a nice view.
Yeah, it pulled back all the way behind your characters and just began circling you. And that was your reward, because it's like, oh, you want to climb this thing for no reason? Okay, we'll give you a thing for no reason. But it wasn't like, you've climbed one of 40 shrines. But it doesn't have to be. If it's the player's choice to do something, the reward doesn't have to be tangible. It can be similarly intangible.
That's the other really enticing thing for me, is because you don't have this mini map that's constantly getting cluttered with things that you can do. There's no sense of trying to complete it. There's no sense of trying to do everything. You just go off, you collect things, and you do your own things.
You live your life, man.
Like, I have bits on the map that I've marked that I want to go to, and the game will be done for me once I've been to all of those eventually. Like, that's the point, you know? And it's not like 100%, but it's the same thing of like, yes, you climb a mountain for no reason, but there's as much cool stuff up on the mountains as there is on the ground, and there's secrets everywhere. And it's weird. Like, I was playing it, and it's totally not the experience I expected to get from this game at all. But I was in a point yesterday where I was just walking along on top of these really green, verdant, grassy hills, and I climbed up these hills, and I was just kept climbing higher and higher, and I was just looking down, and there was clearly loads of interesting stuff down below me, some ruins or something that was in the distance, but I was just on top of these hills, and there was a boar running around, and I was just like, I was so relaxed.
Well, this is the crazy thing, the way that there's no music as well, or very little music.
And then it comes in with some twingly piano and gentle. But I had this point because, right, and this is so vital, because I hadn't been every 5 seconds, every 2 seconds pressing start to look at the map, to check my bearings, to check I'm going the right way, to check what's nearby. I'd existed in this for the whole of this journey up this hill. And I had this moment where I turned around and saw the sun setting, and I looked down and I saw miles away the place I'd been about half an hour ago. I was like, that's the stable, the horse stables. I was down there. I've come so far. And the part of my brain, the way I reacted to that, was exactly the same as when I was climbing mountains last
IRL,
summer in real life, and turned around and looked down at this view and went, oh my God, that's the mountain we were on earlier. We walked all this way. And yeah, I mean, I really think that the key to that is what I said earlier about where does the game reside? You need to keep the game residing in the world.
You know, it's funny. You gotta. I guess it just amuses me to think that it's like developers are like, oh, we're going to make an open world game, and you know, there are any number of ways to do that, but it is the answer is not necessarily We'll give a player a horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you like this horse? It's yours. What am I going to do with him? You can go up round.
I mean, your horse fixation aside, like, you're completely bang on. And I think that's the thing is that open world games, the majesty of what it can be like to explore a big world.
Yes.
I think so many of the systems that we've settled on as being like right
well,
are not.
Not to return to a game that I have more experience with than you, but The Long Dark is funny because I do recommend people play it. It is just a fabulous, weird survival game that's still in early access, I think. So give it a prod. And lovely people work on it. But that is neither here nor there. The point is that you don't have a horse. You don't have vistas necessarily. You just have like very small distances you cover. The point is that it's so unbelievably cold and dangerous with a wolf somewhere that your exploration, your journey is like, you're in this hut that you've found and you've chosen that shitty cabin to be your home and you've built a fire and you go fishing sometimes. And every day when you go fishing, you look on the other side of a frozen lake and you're like, I could make it over there maybe. But it would be dark by the time I got there. Yeah, but you think, okay, would it be dark? Could I find my way back in the dark? And so like exploration can be very minuscule. It can be very human and small. It's just about the circumstances in which you do that exploration. You know, for you or me in real life, climbing a hill feels exciting because we don't do that, and it still feels like an achievement. Anyway, yeah.
It's even, I mean, it's funny how like there are, and I'd say to anyone listening, like at the moment, everyone's saying that Breath of the Wild is revolutionary. It isn't really. It just actually it implements game systems that are already knocking around that actually just make more sense to this sort of game design in terms of making it feel like what it could do. But there's also no hurry. It's not a game, I imagine, which is going to go stale or age very quickly. It's a sort of game you could probably play in a couple of years' time and it'll still be wonderful.
You know what I'm doing this weekend?
What are you doing?
I'm going to buy Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, which I never played.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop them in my Wii U.
I'm just really hoping they release them on the Switch because they'd be lovely on that. So I'm sure they will. I mean, actually, I don't know. Nintendo can sometimes be silly about money. But yeah, I mean, it's just tiny things. You swim in a river. It will, yeah, like rivers have currents.
Okay.
Like temperatures matter. And there's so many ways you can solve everything. You're like, I'm too cold. Well, there's like 4 or 5 different things you can do about that. What are you going to do? Like, and it's full of these little moments where you just go, oh, I'm in a pickle. And then you go, what if I do this? And it works. And you feel like genius. And again, like everyone will have different experiences. And I'm just so joyful about just relaxing and enjoying this world and just exploring and going on tiny micro adventures. I feel like a small child again.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like as much as I am enjoying Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm doing it as a stressful, like I say, I'm playing it very hard. It seems completely the opposite of the thing you're playing. Matthew, I think games might be okay.
I think games are good. I think that's a thing.
Let's talk about an old game.
An old game. Now it's time for our feature on Daft Souls, where we go and look at an old game. Do the jingle.
Don't step on my childhood.
This time on Don't Step on My Childhood, we have a real gem from my past, Gunstar Heroes.
And my past as well.
Everyone's past. I mean, as we said on the video that we recorded, you can watch on YouTube. If not now, then soon. Basically, I got really lucky as a child. I just went into WH Smith's and I liked the look of the box, and so I bought it. And I actually got very lucky a number of times as like a 6 or 7 year old, or maybe 9.
If you went to WH Smith's now, you couldn't get that lucky, could you?
No,
what's the best thing you could buy now?
Lined A4 pads.
I would say a smutty magazine.
Last time I went into WH Smith's, I saw a magazine about steam trains that had been left on the same shelf as a Make Your Own Will set, which I felt was the perfect Venn diagram of WH Smith's audiences.
Wow.
For those of you who don't live in England, WH Smith's is kind of a weird stationery shop that's dying. Anyway, Gunstar Heroes.
That was efficient.
Fantastic co-op adventure shooty thing.
Yes, a beautiful 2-player game. A sort of run and gun platformer. Controls will be... It seems like Metal Slug initially in that you run and gun. But then you realise that
run and gun and karate, flying kicks,
run, gun, and karate,
sliding kicks. You can throw things. It basically it's effectively a 2-button game if you discount the switchy weapon button, which frankly you just press by accident and doesn't need to exist.
Yes.
It's a 2-button game, and what the amount it does with 2 buttons is pretty phenomenal. It's also just relentlessly inventive in terms of enemy design, bosses, level design, game design.
We're gonna get to all that, Matthew. I know what you're wondering.
What am I wondering?
You're wondering what the plot of Gunstar Heroes is.
Of course I'm wondering that, but I'm not because I know what it is. But why don't you inform
You
people?
know what, Matt? I'm on Wikipedia now, and I don't think you do. The game's backstory concerns an evil organization that created an extremely powerful robot called...
Gold and silver.
Oh, he's good.
Ah!
For use as a weapon to destroy civilization from...
What do you mean? From space?
the moon.
Yeah, it's close.
Through the efforts of... This is the heroes.
The Gunstar heroes?
The Gunstar family. Did you know they were brothers?
Didn't know they were brothers.
Twin brothers, red
Does that mean it's their dad? The old guy is their dad.
Let's find out. Twin brothers, red and blue, sister yellow, and older brother green.
Yeah, see?
Gold and silver is defeated, and the 4 gems that served as its power source were taken and hidden throughout the Earth. The Gunstars, exhausted, seal themselves in stasis pods on the moon while civilization rebuilds itself. So yeah, that's the... Oh, no, sorry, there's a
Yeah, that's not
there's
the
a bit
story.
more. As time passes, Gold and Silver begins to be seen as a god that will lead righteous people to paradise. General Grey, leader of a dictatorship known as the Empire, sends an expedition to the moon in order to excavate the 4 gems and awaken Gold and Silver, so that he can... Matt, I'm about 15% of the way through.
My God.
Did you know... But the plot, when you actually play the video game,
I didn't know that Green was your brother.
is 2 sentences. Like, when you
Yeah.
start the game, it's like, there's a robot.
But I mean, I still got a lot of it. I got that basically you had to go and get the emeralds from these 4 people, and they wanted the emeralds for something bad. And then they take the emeralds back, and then you have to go to space, and then you...
I started reading this to take the piss of like, oh, game plots are bad, but I've kind of got a grudging respect for Gunstar Heroes now, because when you play, you go from turning on that game to shooting things in a few seconds, and then it's just a wild ride where the
And
story...
it does have an evocative plot. I swear, right? It
Yes.
has, at the start, like, you're chasing Green, who's like clearly your buddy, but is now bad. And then you have the 4 people who have to kill to get the emeralds. One of them is Green, and he's clearly, because he looks like you, he looks like a Gunstar hero. You're like, he's clearly used to be a Gunstar hero, and he isn't anymore. You don't know why. And I don't want to read that Wikipedia, because I always like having the mystery in my head.
I feel like
Why do we have to do that?
We've drunk the Kool-Aid. This
Why?
is one of the dumbest games of all time.
And then
we're talking about it like it's
He redeems himself,
Tolstoy.
though. I'm pretty sure Green, towards the end of the game, has a moment where he
Well, that completes his
He
narrative
redeems
arc,
himself,
doesn't
completes his narrative arc. And Gold and Silver, what a bastard. He's really hard. He's like a horrible robot man.
it? Okay,
What have you done, Quinns? What have you done?
I feel like we're losing both the people listening to this and me.
Right, okay.
But this game is genuinely brilliant. It is. While playing the video, I started rambling about how it actually weirdly reminded me of Halo of all things.
Yeah, that was odd.
No, here's what we do. You have an amount of space on screen, and in Metal Slug or like Metroid, that's just a shooting gallery, right?
Mhm.
In Gunstar Heroes, it's more like the geography of the space, like a Halo level, because you have guns, you have the ability to throw enemies, you have the ability to jump or throw your co-op partner.
Or hang on the edge of anything.
Yes, which means that it's about deciding which of your tools to... Oh, sorry, you can also jump kick, you can also slide. So it's almost like the flow chart of what you do in any given moment is tremendously exciting, and the screen is constantly in flux.
Yeah, and it's also constantly full of explosions.
Yes.
It's just like you're aware of what's going on, but everything is always exploding. And the levels are really short. But you're right, because it means that basically it's just like, it's almost like a film strip of scenarios of being like, shooting things, shooting and jumping things with 1 platform, 2 platforms. Now you're going up a pyramid. There's a boss at the top of the pyramid. Now you're sliding down a pyramid.
It is. I think the reason that it has so much love is like, it is. This is a weird lesson to take away from this, as anyone who's interested in game design. It is easily 25% of the length of other Genesis platformers.
Yeah.
If that. Like, it is breathtakingly short. And so full of fun stuff. And it just says...
I think finishing it would probably take about 2 hours.
You reckon?
Yeah, because I mean, we just played 2 levels.
We
and
were
it took us
dying a
about
lot, though.
half an hour. Yeah, no, but I mean, even if you get through perfectly, you're probably still looking at an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
I don't know. I feel like you could finish some of the levels in like 12
Because I felt
minutes.
towards the end there were some points where it did drag. Like when you go to space, there's like some bits where you're like, I think the space level where you're flying
Okay,
around
fine. But
spaceships.
compared to
you're
like
come
what's in
on.
my head, Sonic or Vector
Oh
Man.
yeah, I mean that Sonic that got boring like after the 2nd level, I think.
Yeah, but it's just long. But this is my point. What if Sonic packed... I mean, Sonic didn't have any ideas. But like, what if Mario had packed all of the ideas in a full Mario game into half the time?
Yeah, like Super Mario World, but it's over in an hour and a half.
Yes.
And your mind is blown.
No, but that's the comparison that we've got here.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's funny in the fact that actually, even though despite that, it's very short, but it's packed full of details. And it's funny how it took me and my brother a long time to be able to competently complete it. But there's so many tiny details, some visual, some audio, some like just little tiny jokes, like that tiny soldier man that you had a hell of a time trying to beat in the video we
people
recorded.
should definitely watch
But when
that.
he dies in this like immensely over the top tiny explosion that just goes on forever.
No, it has a sense of humor. It's smart, but it's it's one of those wonderfully. I'm trying to think of I don't want to say Grasshopper Studios did it, but Japan often comes out with these games that in the West, I feel we either make games that are dumb or are very sort of worthy and often artistic. That's a lot of what you get out of our indie scene, but it's the indie designers that I like the most are the ones that are simultaneously very smart and funny
and dumb
and funny and self-aware. Because that's just my jam, I guess. But it's crazy to go back to an era where AAA could do that. Like even like Far Cry Blood Dragon, of a game that's trying to be 80s and neon and very like, we're making fun of era, still doesn't feel as madcap and in control and clever as Gunstar Heroes.
No.
I'm just looking to see if it had an arcade release, because that's the only way I can think that it would reasonably explain its...
Explain it. Yeah, it was a very odd mix of designs.
No, it was on the Sega Genesis and then ported onto the Game Gear. So like Christ. But so it was that arcade structure of you're going to do this again and die and you'll just try again from the beginning, but lent to home consoles, which I guess maybe was more common than I remember.
But it did more than that though. I think what was really interesting and crucial about it was Gunstar was just quite hard, especially if you play on your own. Actually, it's a lot easier with two players because you can throw each other in stuff and it does so much damage.
Or throw each other off ledges by accident.
Yeah, so obviously, there's problems there.
It's actually the opposite of Sonic the Hedgehog if someone plays Tails and can carry Sonic. It's like your friend can throw you down a waterfall by accident.
But the 4 levels you start with before the game becomes linear and has the kind of finale sequence, which is very boss heavy and mad, you have these 4 levels. They're all very different. Like one of them is basically vertically jumping up all the time. One of them is horizontally moving all the time in a mine chute. One of them, as we played in the
it's snakes and ladders.
Snakes and ladders.
Hell.
Yeah, with bosses. So it means that you've got the double thing of with that snakes and ladders dice palace. Every time you play that, it's slightly different. And sometimes you're praying for like an easy run through. You're like, oh come on, just miss the hard bosses. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you're like, no curry and rice, no problems. But also you get to choose which order you want to do those levels in.
Well, that's why it reminds me of Mega Man.
Yeah, because you have that argument about what the easiest route is. Obviously, you start with pink. No, that's really easy. First
but
level
do you
is
get a
first
benefit
level.
for defeating a boss?
Yeah, you get 10 more health.
Oh, okay.
So you get more health each time. Also, though, I think it was like there were different difficulties. I remember like there was the green boss had like 6 different versions. If you did it early or something or late, I can't remember. Basically, there was some subtle variances in some regards, I think, in terms of the order of how you played them. But also it meant that like it was that repeat, because the latter half of the game got really hard. So you die, game over, and you eventually start again. But each time you started again afresh, because Genesis didn't have save games, you just play it until you decided you were done, and then switch it off, and then next Saturday morning switch it on again and try again. But it meant even when you started to get that mastery, that meant you could mix it up. You're like, hey, let's do the hardest level first.
The final thing I'll say about Gunstar Heroes is it is the proud holder, or like one of several joint holders of like studios that were actually able to get something mad funky out of the Genesis chip, the sound chip.
Yeah, the music in that game.
The Genesis is responsible for like some of the worst crimes against video game music. Like I think it was Marble Madness on the Genesis. If you all listen to the Genesis Marble Madness soundtrack that I'll put on to you privately after this podcast is over,
God.
is one of the most like it sounds like food poisoning. It's the most disgustingly unpleasant thing, but in the hands of the right composer, the Genesis sound chip it just sounded like every instrument was slap bass, and it's
it's just an unbelievable soundtrack. And as I said, I really do think it was the thing that got me into discordant music. It's why I've ended up having such a strange taste in music.
Have you played Thumper yet?
I haven't. I need to. It's on my list. It really is.
Yeah, or possibly worth waiting until you get a VR headset.
Yeah, possibly. But it's that kind of the music, especially in the mine level, where it's just like, I kind of blew my mind as a kid. I remember being quite young and being like, this doesn't make sense because this music is not nice to listen to, and yet it is. I remember being confused by it.
Is it that challenging? I feel like it's
It's this weird hypnotic loop to it. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Okay. Mega Man also had Mega Man X had some pretty great tunes, but that was later.
Why don't you and Mega Man get married?
Maybe I'll make you play Mega Man X.
You and Mega Man, your horses coming over here. You're fed up with horses.
I like Mega Man. I don't
chilling
like
for
horses.
Mega Man.
What's so complicated about that? If people do have,
it's genuinely really tickled me. I don't know.
Oh God! Well, now it's up to me now for the next stuff. So I was like,
next time.
I wonder if I should choose. You've thrown me. I've had a good time playing something good, but I would probably have even more of a good time putting something terrible in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, I grabbed for something and it had to be Gunstar Heroes at some point.
You know why this is the best feature? Because it turns out there's a lot of games in the past. Like, as much as we could talk about, new games, we have like 16 years of good games.
And I still cannot believe, playing Gunstar Heroes, that no other game has had a co-op game where you take it in turns to throw a dice and then you do a little challenge on your own.
That's Mario Party, isn't it? Or do you always do
But the fact that it's like a cooperative thing, where in that one, you're trying to reserve this health between you because you want to get to the boss with as much health as possible.
Yeah.
So it means that you're trying to collectively, because you share health, by every time you come back to life, you split your health bar down the middle. It means you have a situation where you're doing challenges on your own with the other player simultaneously rooting for you.
And laughing.
And getting frustrated when you're like losing 60 health because it's like yours.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just a fascinating dynamic that is still so fun and that we've had all of these years and nobody's done that. Why?
I'm always in favor of game developers ripping games off. Like
Everyone rip off Gunstar Heroes.
Everyone rip off any old game. There's a lot of good ideas in the past.
It is. So we've got no 5 questions with the dev this time. Didn't get anything back in time, but we're going to have some obviously next time. Got some very, very cool people in the pipeline. Very excited about hearing what they have to say on some stuff. So we're going to jump in to some questions.
Do we have a jingle for
this? A jingle. Yeah, do a jingle.
Question time. Hello there. Why don't you relax? Take off those shoes. It's time for a question from you.
Okay, we've got a question from non-caveman Dan, who is presumably not a caveman. It says, given that a lot of people who grew up with computer games are now at the stage where they have children of their own, is there a company or selection of games that is truly for everyone, adults and children? And if there isn't, then what would make the best all-age accessible game? Basically, have computer games got their version of Pixar yet?
Wait, sure. Is this a trick question? Surely this is Nintendo.
It's basically Nintendo, isn't it? Or alternative, lots of people have pointed out the Lego games.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was gonna. It was me.
Always taking things out of your mouth, aren't I? It's better than the other way around, I suppose. Anyway. The other thing is, what I love about the people who make Lego games, I love that they just keep making games for the same group, not the same audience. No, I've said this wrong.
You do put lots of things in my mouth, though.
I do.
I mean,
food,
like
tea, coffee, other drinks, biscuits, bananas sometimes. But I love that Lego guys, they just make Lego games, right? And they don't do that thing that many devs do of being like, hey, we got these millions of kids who love our games. Let's keep making games for the same audiences. They just kind of keep making games that are specifically for parents playing with young children.
Yeah.
Or like adults like them as well. But mainly it's like, that's their thing.
Nintendo's
do it really well.
Some of that recently, haven't they? They've been putting you can be a shitty toad running around with Mario.
Be a shitty toad.
Or like
aspirational stuff. Hey kid, you can be a shitty toad.
No, it's Dad's a shitty toad.
Is he?
He can be with the new Mario out today. I should really play my Wii
U more. Dad's a shitty toad out on Wii U now.
Oh, Toad's Treasure Track. I need to play that as well. I need to dust off my Wii U. I literally only have.
I want to play Nintendo. Your Dad's a shitty toad coming soon. It's funny though, but in weird ways though. Like I find it fascinating that all of the adverts for the Nintendo Switch seem to show children playing it, but they're clearly aiming at people like me. And it's funny with a new Zelda game. It's quite complicated. I had a boy who I think was 8 years old trying to play on it, and he really couldn't. He kept dying. He died and died and died and died.
Why? Is he like a kid who wanted to play on your console because his parents wouldn't let him?
I just had it in my bag when I was round somebody's house for dinner, and my wife was like, "Oh, have you got your thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have." And then as soon as it was out of the bag that I had a new Nintendo console, this kid was like, "Can I have a go?"
Oh no! But then then you have to look at his parents.
No, I had to get permission from his parents, and they were like, "Oh, that's fine." And I was like, "Okay." And then he was playing on my Zelda file, and it was really funny because it meant like he just like there was a point where he was like, how do we get to the man? And I'm like, I don't know, because you skipped through the dialogue. And then it got to a bit where I was like, okay, I'll help you get here, but when you get here, you need to tell me. And then he did, and it was like a lot. It was the first cutscene exposition that you get about half an hour into the game. And he was like, I'm bored. How do we skip this? And I'm like, you can't, because I want to watch it. And this is my save
Not
file.
mechanically.
And I was being really relaxed, being like, I'm just going to let this kid like play this while I half watch it, and he's just have like chunks of the game spoiled for me. But I'm like, yeah, fine. He was having fun, but it was too hard for him. And it's funny. It's definitely a game for like teenagers or grown-ups. It's not simple. So I think that, yeah, Nintendo maybe sometimes it's like kids and adults, but they're definitely branching out a bit. Anyway,
I scrolled past the next question because it was too complicated.
Okay,
and
fine.
I need to go, and I would love to answer it because it's a great question. Matt, stall for time while I lean away from the microphone.
Well, the thing I would say actually about the guy saying at the start, about how a lot of people playing games are now growing up and playing kids with themselves. We're quite bad for it on Daft Souls at the moment, as we've just said. I've just done a tremendous amount of swearing, but we are trying to get better.
All of that though, right?
We are trying to get better at bleeping out in the videos, and may try and move on to the podcast. At some point.
I didn't. Oh, I wouldn't have sworn if I knew you wouldn't.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I haven't the podcasts are. I don't know. I'd like to, but we'll work it out. That
was a peek behind the curtain there.
See, I know, right?
That's how I really talk to Matt off camera. It's just with fear. Kirsten Findley has a question, and this is relevant for me. I don't have a lot of time for games at the moment. What are some excellent games that are also short? To which I will tease the next video I'm doing. I would say Stories Untold is a really lovely and very, very short game. And do you have something to say? You're biting your lip in a weird way.
I think I just had too much caffeine. It's fine. Carry on.
You only had one coffee.
I've had one before you arrived.
Whoa!
The universe exists outside of you, Quins. You're not the center of a black hole.
What are some good games that are really short? I would say
I played one recently.
You can play some Kitty Horror Show games if you like. If you Google Kitty Horror Show and like incredibly spooky lo-fi stuff.
Yeah, if you want to be scared.
Definitely play Anatomy.
If you just want to have like a really gentle time with something which is interesting and I have a PC and you want to play a game which is not amazing but is kind of sweet and does some really unexpected and interesting things that'll make you go, oh my God, that's so cool. Then I definitely recommend a game called One Shot. Which is one word, one shot. As in you've got one shot. Do not miss your chance.
Oh, that's a super short.
It's really short, but it had some bits in it that I was like, that's so cool.
If you want something very short on your phone, I could also recommend that you can play going to A to B for as long as you want. Reigns, I think, is very good. That is REIGNS. Lovely little iPhone and I think Android game about
it's on Android.
Being a
king. It's very funny.
It is very funny.
I've enjoyed that a lot. Some of the dialogue in it is very funny. But yeah, just briefly go back to what I said before as well. We are starting to beep out stuff in videos. If you're watching the videos and you're going, why are they beeping out swear words? It's not because we believe in censorship or anything like that, or even that we're making kids videos for kids. It's more, as somebody's pointed out, lots of people who follow our work now are people who are old enough to have their own kids, and they might want to watch the videos with their kids in the room, etc., etc.
I mean, it's both, right? It is that, but then for me, it's that beeping is funnier than swearing.
That's also true.
Like if you've got a punchline that is swearing or a conversation that's funny and involves swearing, beeping is just funnier.
Yeah, but I mean,
for me, it's good for the kids. It's good for the Quins.
It's good for kids.
That's also going to be our new motto. That's going to be on the t-shirts.
But it's just a case of being polite to young parents who increasingly, people our age, bobbing out babbers. Anyway.
I beg your pardon?
Bobbing out babbers.
Is that what you do when you give me a banana?
No, that's bobbing out a banana. Bob a little banana in the mouth. Popping out babbers is when you pop out a baby.
Oh, okay.
It's just slang. Cool slang. Because I am definitely down with the kids. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Our YouTube channel, which is
Cool Ghosts.
http:// www.
You, as in you the person. Tube,
as in
a piece of tube.
Tube modeled compressor.
Yes.
In a TV.
.com,
which stands for Community of
Internet.
Stop! If you search for Cool Ghosts on YouTube, you see all the fun video content that Matt and I do.
I mean, for love of God, I hope people are aware we make videos.
Well, no, we found out from people that we do a sister podcast as part of Shut Up and Sit Down about running the site and about board games. And
that's the most mysterious thing in the world. I still have people coming up to me and going,
don't realize
hey,
it's a
are
website
you from the Shut Up and Sit Down
videos.
podcast? And I'm like, yeah. But then I still meet people who just think it's a podcast, and I'm like, how are you not aware that we make videos?
If you've not...
Like, the videos are the best bit, I feel. Podcasts are nice, but come on.
If you are at all interested in the board game renaissance that we are currently going through, and we are, the board games are phenomenal. Great new ones come out every week. They are really very, very, very good. And we do some of our best work has been video reviews of board games.
Yes.
And that is to be found on shutupandsitdown.com. Give it a visit. You might like it. If you've never played a board game, don't think it's not for you. It is, in fact, the website for you, because that whole website is targeted at people who don't know what these things are.
Exactly. And it's bloody good. There, I said it, all right?
Whoa.
It's better than horses. Are we agreed?
Oh, Shut Up and Sit Down is better than horses. No, Shut Up and Sit Down is better than video game horses, because real life horses are pretty good.
Yeah, fair. That's fair.
Cormac McCarthy wrote, "In a horse's eye, you can see the world entire."
He also wrote a book called The Road. So, yeah, he did a lot of writing, that guy.
This was a very literary. I enjoyed that literary ball that bounced back and
Bit
forth.
of back and forth. I'm an expert at words too, turns out.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Thank you very much for listening to the Daft Cells podcast, everybody. We will be back in a couple of weeks with episode 91.
Bye.
Bye.